Hello, it's Thursday, September 7th, 2017. You are listening to Inception Radio Network, voice of the fringe majority. This is Carol Carl with UFO Headline News. Here we are at earthsky.org looking for the sky tonight for this first week of September. And here's the headline, Daytime Moon, West After Sunrise. Actually, this is going to be an event that begins tomorrow morning, September 8th, and for a few mornings after that, you can look west after sunrise and see the daytime moon. The September 2017 full moon has passed, and now the moon is technically in that waning gibbous phase, which means it rises in the east later and later every evening. So, looking east before going to bed tonight, you can catch the moon over the eastern horizon. And then you'd look in the west after sunrise tomorrow, or the next few mornings, see that daytime moon over the western horizon. Someone wrote to earthsky.org and asked this question, when is the best time to see the moon in the sky during daylight hours? And the answer is that a daytime moon is up there much of the time, but because it's pale against that blue sky, it isn't as noticeable as the moon at night. The most noticeable moon at night is the one that stays out all night long. That would be around the time of full moon every month, when the moon is 180 degrees from the sun, or opposite the sun in our sky. A full moon rises around sunset and sets around sunrise. But now the moon is in a waning gibbous phase. As we said, it rises later every night and sets in the west later each day after sunrise. So for the next several mornings after sunrise, look for the waning gibbous moon in the west during the morning hours. At mid-northern latitudes in North America, the moon will set better than 1 hour after sunrise, September 8th, and will set a solid hour later each day thereafter. And by the way, Deborah Bird, who writes this for earthsky.org, adds that the moon is up during the day half the time. It has to be, since it orbits around the whole Earth once a month. The crescent moon is hard to see because it's so near the sun in the sky. At the vicinity of last quarter moon, about a week from now, you might have to crane your neck looking up to notice the moon after sunrise. Ordinarily, we don't look up to see the waning last quarter moon and the waning crescent after sunrise, and that's one reason that people so often miss that moon during the day. Day by day, the lighted portion of the waning gibbous moon will shrink, and the half-lit last quarter moon will come September 13th. So watch for the daytime moon to climb higher and higher into your western sky after sunrise all this coming week. Bottom line, starting around the morning of September 8th, 2017, watch for the daytime moon to appear in your west after sunrise. So again, we can all say, good morning, moon. We found an excellent site. It's spaceweather.com. News and information about meteor showers, solar flares, auroras, and much, much more. And here's why we went there. The auroras, the solar flares. Here's the story. Major X-class solar flare. It's an update. On September 6th at 12:02 UT, sunspot AR2673 unleashed a major X9.3 class solar flare, the strongest solar flare in more than a decade. X-rays and UV radiation from the blast ionized the top of Earth's atmosphere, which caused a strong shortwave radio blackout over Europe, Africa, and the Atlantic Ocean. There's a blackout map included with this article. You can link to it later at ufoheadlinenews.com. It shows the affected areas. It's a great visual. And while you're there, you can check out the newly arriving images from the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory. They confirm that that explosion also produced a coronal mass ejection, a CME, with an Earth-directed component. There isn't any credit, no byline, no individual connected with this article, but they mention that many people are asking about the historic context of this solar event. How epic is it? Here's the answer. This is a decade-class flare. A list of the most powerful solar flares recorded since 1976 ranks this flare at number 14, tied with a similar explosion in 1990. However, compared to that iconic Carrington event of 1859, where the telegraph operators were literally knocked from their stools, or even the more recent Halloween storms of 2003, This event is relatively mild. Modern power grids, telecommunications, and other sun-sensitive technologies should weather this storm with little difficulty. On the other hand, skywatchers could see some fantastic auroras before the week is over, and ham radio operators will surely be noticing strange propagation effects as the sun exerts its influence on our planet's ionosphere. Stay tuned for updates. Here's an update of a sorts. It's from Hurricane Harvey territory, Corpus Christi, Texas, and in this case, it's a UFO sighting. We were wondering if something like this would occur, and here it is. We picked it up from UFOstalker.com. It's MUFON case number 86539. The date of this sighting, 8/25/2017. It was reported after the fact, understandably, on 9/6/2017. Here's the summary. Landed in street in front of husband and I during height of Hurricane Harvey. Our witness lists sighting specifics, viewing distance 20 feet or less, altitude landed, sighting duration 1 minute, object features dome and other. The description of the object's flight path is also other, and this object is reported to have been shaped Saturn-like. So we got the ring things going on. Weather-wise, well, it was a hurricane. The maximum temperature was 82 degrees Fahrenheit, 28 degrees Celsius. The mean temperature, 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 27 degrees Celsius, down to a minimum 77 degrees Fahrenheit, 25 degrees Celsius. The maximum visibility for this event was 10 miles, 16 kilometers. Mean visibility, 3 miles, 4 kilometers. After that, there's no listing. The conditions were raining. You can say that again. Here is the account. Hurricane Harvey was occurring the evening of August 25th, 2017. The power was off. The winds were hitting the west side of our house. We were hot due to no air conditioning, so we opened our living room windows and our front door on the east side of our house. There was no rain or high wind coming inside from this east side. All we could do was sit and ride out the hurricane. We sat and watched the neighbor's pecan tree bending and whipping in the high winds and gusts. Around 1:30 a.m. or so, as we sat in the dark of our living room watching the storm increase in intensity, all of a sudden I heard a very deep hum. I started to say, "What is that deep humming noise?" And at that same moment, appearing before my eyes was an object descending down to the middle of our vacant street. It appeared almost as wide as the street, as the best I could tell. It was dark, storming outside. In spite of the tremendous winds and rain roaring outside, I heard this hum. I thought at first I was seeing a tow truck or something, but that made no sense, for it was the wrong shape. The lighting was wrong. This object appeared round, flattish, one red light on top, which turned into multiple red lights, an LED kind of glowing white type light that encircled the entire circumference of this craft as well. As the craft descended to ground level, that then encircled the entire circumference of the craft. As it moved to our right slowly, that white circumference light appeared to starburst. It sort of glowed into a flash. It's a bit hard to describe. A brilliant flash. I immediately began looking through our front door, expecting to see something, and I saw the leading edge of this thing as it flashed a brilliant white light, and then I saw what looked like sparklers set off. It was a Roman candle kind of fireworks type display. I guess as this thing was disappearing in the manner it left, it shot out sparks. These sparks were rectangular, brilliant white, edged in brilliant gold, and sort of curly-cued. All I could think of at this point was, those sparks are on the far side, and the near side of that utility pole. I hope it doesn't catch fire. Funny, since it was storming outside. These sparks appeared to shoot up and away from the brilliant white light then, and they gently fell, twisting as they fell. I can only describe them as looking like very delicate confetti. It was quite beautiful. I truly believe this was an emission of some type, as this thing disappeared then. This craft simply disappeared before our eyes, almost as quickly as it appeared. The craft did not appear to be affected in any way by these high hurricane-force winds and the high gusts of winds that were occurring. I've seen several unexplained things during my 60 years of life, in my own backyard, too. About 22 years ago, my husband saw this as well. I have always been skeptical of people saying they see multicolored lights on these things. Although being a believer myself, I now believe in the multi-light theory, too, because this thing had what appeared to be one red light on top, and then it multiplied into several red lights. There was nothing in the street after the intense flash, no vehicle of any kind. I sat bewildered, as was my husband. My brain was desperately trying to grab what I was seeing and make sense of it, but I couldn't, because it's not something I recognized. We have no trees in our front yard. Our view was unobstructed. As fearful as I was sitting through this horrible hurricane, I remained more intrigued by what we had just witnessed. My husband missed seeing any of the detail that I did. He wasn't looking in that direction at that moment, and this didn't last very long. But he did indeed see that flash, the flash of the circular light. Thank you for reading this. It is true. Somehow we get a true read from this, indeed. All we can say is just wow. Here's another wow headline. Fireball seen in the sky over Great Falls. This is from KRTV News in Great Falls, Montana. It gets a byline for David Sherman. Here's the story. Something in the sky caught the eye of some Great Falls residents Monday night. The incident happened about 11 p.m. on Monday. The American Meteor Society says it received 99 reports about a fireball seen over parts of Montana, Idaho, Washington, and also in Alberta and British Columbia. There have not been any reports of damage or injuries. Here's what some people posted on KRTV Great Falls Facebook page. Brian Shug said, "Anything about a red meteor or a type of object crashing down behind the hills in the 57 area? I watched the whole thing. It lit up the sky for a few seconds, then went dark. Had to have been a few miles from town, if that." Kristen Taylor wrote, "Please tell me someone else just saw the huge fireball fall out of the sky." Terry Bartlett adds, "Tonight, when I was driving home from work, I saw an object in the sky that looked like a meteor. It was heading downwards towards the ground. It had a fiery tail. It almost looked like fireworks, but it was different. It was too large to be fireworks. I was turning onto 10th Avenue off 23rd Street by the Albertsons grocery store. This direction is approximate, 9th Street and maybe Central, possibly even where the river runs through. Just curious if there'd been any reports that the, quote, sky is falling, end quotes." And last but not least, Sarah Snegoski adds, "I saw it from start to finish. It was phenomenal. Never seen something like that in life. I had to pull my car over. I had to pinch myself and ask the person in the car with me if I was really seeing what I saw. Ha ha, it was huge." According to the American Meteor Society, this object entered the atmosphere near the small city of Boswell, and it, quote, terminated, end quotes, a technical term for crash and burn, perhaps, near Meadow Creek, British Columbia. There are other people who caught this object on video, and they posted for all the social media usual suspects. So maybe a meteor, maybe not. We'll just keep a to be continued on this story. Here's a pretty direct trajectory from Montana to Michigan, to the city of Lapeer. They spell that Lapeer. It's MUFON case 86537. The date of the sighting is 9/6/2017. It got a same-day report. Under the categories of sighting specifics, our witness begins with a viewing distance of over 1 mile, the altitude over 500 feet, and that night there was cloud cover over Lapeer. Sighting duration 5 seconds. Object features unknown. The object's flight path, straight line path, and this object was shaped like a sphere. So let's read and see what appeared over Lapeer. "I was sitting at the kitchen table, and I happened to look out the window in the southeast direction. when my eye caught the bright objects. At first I thought these bright objects were reflections from lights that I had on inside the house, but then I saw they were moving from left to right. The first group were at different heights, and they didn't seem to be in any particular formation. They were followed closely then by 2 or 3 lights in the same manner. All of these bright lights were traveling at a very high speed, and within a few seconds they were gone out of my view. So much so that my wife didn't have time to get to the window, and she was only a few steps away. Oh, so near and yet so far. Let's go not too far. We'll go to New York, the city of Cold Spring, for this report. MUFON gave it a case number. It's 86531, and they'll use that number to track and hopefully identify this sighting. It took place on January 14th this year. It wasn't reported till September 5th of this year. Here's what the summary says. Didn't see lights in person. Lights showed up later in photo. Not appearing in other photo. Yep, there are photos with this account, and you can check them out later. Do your own home analysis. Head on over to UFOHeadlineNews.com. They will be there. Sighting specifics, viewing distance, 501 feet to 1 mile. All of the other specifics, altitude, object features, flight path, and shape, they're all listed as unknown. Back in January, the temperature over Cold Spring was, cold. The maximum temperature, 28 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 2 degrees Celsius. Mean temperature, 24 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 4 degrees Celsius. And the minimum, down to 19 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 7 degrees Celsius. The visibility factors, maximum was 20 miles, 32 kilometers. The mean visibility, 11 miles, 18 kilometers. The minimum down to 2 miles, 2 kilometers, because it was snowing. Here's the account. My fiancé was working in upstate New York, and when he travels, he always takes pictures. We were looking, actually, for photos to enter in a contest. So we clicked on these old photos and noticed the bizarre lights. He doesn't remember seeing them in person. I think he would have remembered seeing these clusters. And the lights do not appear in a photo taken a few minutes afterwards. This appears to be 3 distinct clusters in the sky, 2 lights flying together just under the mountain ridge as well. He was outside, so they're not reflections in a window, and we couldn't find any sources of light on the ground which might have caused some weird reaction, the camera lens flare, etc. Wish I had more information to give, but I'm reporting this on behalf of my fiancé months after the event, which took place in January. The second photo is from a little later. He didn't take more photos because he didn't even notice the lights until we looked at the pictures today. Yep, they're striking. We studied them for quite a bit of time, actually. They're unique. We're wondering whether or not they could be entered in a photo contest, a UFO photo contest. Say, there's a thought. Let's think about Shag Harbor in Shelburne County, Nova Scotia, shall we? Well, it's the setting for that famous Shag Harbor UFO sighting and the festival. They had some issues last year, and at the last minute, as they were going to have to scale back their expectations, some wonderful anonymous benefactor stepped in and saved the day. Well, fast forward, it's a year later. Here's the story from the coastguard.ca. Shag Harbor. There will be promises of many surprises in store for this year's Shag Harbor UFO Festival as they celebrate the 50th anniversary of that October 4th, 1967 UFO incident, an incident world-renowned. Keynote speaker for the festival, which runs September 29th to October 1st, is Chris Stiles. He's been investigating the Shag Harbor incident for several decades. He's co-authored 2 books on the subject, Dark Object, he wrote with Don Ledger, and Impact to Contact. He wrote that one with Graham Sims. Here's a quote from Brock Zink. He's vice president of the Shag Harbor UFO Incident Society. Quote, "There's been a lot of updates to the story. More information is now available since he wrote these 2 books. I'm really looking forward to the presentation. I don't want to give away anything, but I think people are going to be surprised by what it is that Chris Stiles has to say. Organizers have an impressive lineup for the UFO Incident Witness Panel. There'll be a question and answer session, said Brock Zink. On that panel will be Ralph Lowinger. He was a commercial pilot in 1967, flying that night in the skies over southwestern Nova Scotia. Quote, there was a lot going on in the sky that night in 1967, said Brock Zink. And then there's Bill Powley. He was an RCAF radar operator in Barrington. Captain Ronnie Newell, skipper of the Canadian Coast Guard cutter 101 that was on duty that night. And eyewitnesses Laurie Wickens, Peter Gorham, Norman Smith, Michael Crowell, and Bill Boudreau will also sit on that panel. Also joining the festival this year is Quinnon astronomer Tim Doucette from the Dark Skies Observatory. He'll be holding a stargazing session at the impact site. There will also be live podcast recordings with Jordan Bonaparte from Nighttime Podcast and Martin Willis from Podcast UFO. Back on October 4th, 1967, witnesses say they saw lights in the sky coming on in sequence. Those lights eventually took rapid 45-degree turns towards the surface of the water, causing those who saw this to think they'd witnessed a plane crash. No plane crash debris was ever found, but there was a strange yellow foam floating on the surface of that water. This year, there'll be that much-acclaimed guided bus tour again with eyewitness Laurie Wickens, in which he describes what he and others saw. They're going to stage this again this year, said Zink, complete with a reenactment at the impact site with the help of the Canadian Coast Guard and none other than the Royal Canadian Mounted Police taking part. Said Brock Zink, quote, people from all over have bought tickets already. People are really excited for this event, end quotes. If you want more information, if you're in the area or you can get there, further information on the festival as well as ticket info you can find at a link you can find later at ufoheadlinenews.com. Well, that's all there is. There isn't any more. We've got to fly because that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Inception Radio Network. Follow today's broadcast at iHeartRadio or YouTube. Take care of each other. We're all in this together. This is Carol Carl. See you tomorrow.